The RealAgriculture.com Beef School is presented by DuPont Pioneer. To find more Beef School episodes, go to beefschool.ca.
Well, I think in my mind, year-round grazing, we're grazing feed grown where it was grown as much as possible. So we include swath grazing in that definition, and we have done some bale grazing from time to time. And I think for many people, bale grazing also counts as well as stockpiled grass harvested in place. Well, for us, getting into year-round grazing was a bit of an evolutionary process over 4 or 5 years probably. When we decided to seed down our cropland to high legume tame pastures and stop mixed farming and go straight ranching, it gave us some options that we hadn't had before then. So normally, for decades, we'd grazed our native grass in the summertime. We now had enough grass that we had the option to graze it later or at another time. So we eventually got to the point where we tried running our cattle in November, December on some native grass and found that it worked. So once we had that knowledge in place, then we got a little more aggressive. So in our current situation, we'll run cattle on high legume pastures all summer and wean in early November, and then the cows go to native grass in what's now the dormant season from mid-November through sometimes to mid-January. And then we'll finish off the winter sometimes with some bale grazing, but primarily with swath grazing. And the cattle are on swaths right now, and normally we'll take them right to grass. So sometime in early May, we'll go from swath grazing to grass. So that's been our pattern for several years now, and it's proved pretty functional. Well, it's driven costs down. We can feed this winter. It was about $1.40 a day to get feed to those cows on swaths. Last winter it was almost half that. We were at about 80 cents a day. So because of better yields, higher growth the year before. So it's and comparing notes with a neighbor, he was close to double those costs, processing bales and feeding some silage. So driven costs down, and yet we've worked hard to maintain our productivity. So we're still weaning pounds of calf and getting cows in calf and all those productive side of it. We've been able to maintain that. I think we're in a spot here where it's easier than lots of other places. We were in southern Manitoba in the fall of 2016, and it was wet, and so I wouldn't pretend to tell those guys what to do. I think when you get really wet conditions, either in the spring or the fall, it changes your game somewhat. Southern Ontario, the ground doesn't freeze in much of the winter, so they're dealing with mud. So those are big challenges. You get to places on the prairies where the snow gets real deep. I think that's where the bale grazing idea came from. It's functional in deep snow. Swath grazing can become quite a challenge in deep snow. So I think, it's for every producer to analyze his resources and his potentials. And figure out a pathway that'll, get them to reduce costs and still maintain that productivity. Well, I often say we stick handle our way through the winter. We have a plan A, but we've got backup plans, and we always have a bale stack in reserve for when the snow gets too deep or something else quits functioning. But plan A is to get through the winter grazing that stockpiled pasture and then the swath grazing. We've got booted out of some stockpiled pasture by deep snow. If you get it half grazed off and then get a snowstorm and a wind or some crusting, it just becomes too much work for that cow to get the feed she needs. So we've lost some days there, and so now you're out 2 weeks earlier than you thought you were going to be, or whatever. You have to have water in place too, so the water has to work, whatever that dynamic is. So, and swath grazing, we've had some deep snow. We've recently acquired a small disc tool. It's actually a furrow closer in the irrigation country, and we can put that 3-point unit on the back of a tractor and reverse the discs so they peel out instead of in. And on this field behind us here this spring, we spent 2.5 weeks opening up swaths every day so those cows weren't burning up so much energy to get to the feed. And so we've figured out ways. If you go into this game pretty sure it won't work, you'll probably prove yourself right. Yeah. If you go down these trails determined to find a way, most often you can find some way to make it work. So well, I think in this day and age, there's lots of YouTube videos, there's lots of information online, and really analyze what your resources are, and then talk to people that are doing it, because sometimes the real tricks aren't obvious. The thing that really makes it work isn't always obvious. So certainly talking to people that have experience and are doing it is a benefit, I think. You have to embrace the challenge of you're going to do some dancing with nature and take what it gives you. One of the key things for us was when we switched from mixed farming and no longer were worried about putting a crop in late April, early May, we backed our calving off. So now we're calving the 1st of May. So when we wean in November and put those cows on that stockpiled forage, they're in their second trimester. If we were calving in early March, we'd have cows in third trimester trying to do that, and I'm not sure that would work as well. So by the time they get to third trimester, they need a little better feed. We're on to the swath grazing. So you really need to think about the whole year-round system and how everything plays together. And our cows are weaning calves in the fall. They're coming off of high legume pastures. They've been rotated through all summer, so they're generally in pretty good shape. They're in condition 3 and 3.5, sometimes 4. So as we go through that winter and ask them to get by on that tougher feed, sometimes we're peeling back fat while we do it, and they're losing some condition. But they're set up to succeed doing that. So it's all of those elements playing together, when you calve and the time of year, and then the feed resources you have, and the ability to deliver those feed on a regular basis. All of that plays together. So you have to think about the whole year-round system and how it works.